Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, 5 Keys to Building a Practice You Love with College Planning. My name is Katie Flynn from savingforcollege.com, and joining us today is Joe Messenger. He is founder and CEO of Capstone College Partners. For those of you who don't know Joe, he's the leading authority on late-stage college funding. And Capstone College Partners is on a mission to end the student loan crisis one family at a time. They provide training, resources, software, and thought leadership to raise the bar in college funding advice. At the end of the presentation, Joe will give you more details on how to access free and paid training from Capstone, and also a special discount available through savingforcollege.com. Before we get started, I just have a few quick announcements. All participants who attend this webinar in full will be eligible to receive 1 CFP CE credit, and an email will be sent out after the webinar with a link where you can fill in your information to receive that credit. And if you have any questions during the webinar, please enter them into the question box on your control panel. Joe will be answering questions at the end of the presentation, and he's going to do his best to get to as many as possible. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Joe.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to doing this as we're kind of approaching the year end. This is just something that we're doing with a couple of our partnerships, and Saving for College has been a great partner for us. And obviously all the tools and resources they provide, we've actually incorporated a lot of those into what we do. As Katie said, our mission with Capstone College Partners is to end the student loan crisis one family at a time. And we really feel like we need to raise the bar on college funding advice across the industry. What we know and what we've learned is it's kind of been an overshadowed area with not a lot of resources and training, even through the CFP curriculum. So what we've looked to do is take what we've learned in the past decade. Really, we've been focused in this area for a long time. We've developed a process called college pre-approval, and we really want to empower advisors with the training, the resources, and now the tool with our software program to really help you give great advice in this area. So without further ado, we'll dive right into the content because there's quite a bit here. But what I want to focus on really is 5 keys to building a practice you love. If college planning is for a lot of us is a piece of what we do, and in our firm, college planning is really how we look to uniquely serve families, but we do comprehensive planning within our firm, and including asset management and really financial planning, estate planning, all those areas. But really, we see that this is an area that we focused on because there's such a demand for it, and not a lot of folks really focused on helping people in this area. So our focus is in the late stage college funding, so really high school and really doing the college shopping is really kind of what our practice revolves around. But this should be applicable. Most of what we go through today, even if you're looking to work with younger families, if you're looking at exploring other niches, but so hopefully this is helpful regardless if you work with us or do anything going forward. Hopefully some good takeaways for your practice. So here's the 5 keys that I laid out, kind of in order. So they all do interrelate, that's for sure. But we're going to go through these piece by piece. Number 1, have a vision for your practice. Build a practice you love and begin with the end in mind. So I'm going to go through just kind of a case study or an example of that and kind of how to create that vision for your practice, because we're in an amazing industry where you can build a great business and also have a great life that revolves around it. So number 2, in building a great practice, I think it's committing to a niche. In this day and age, differentiating and holding yourself out and having a unique value proposition is a difficult thing. So we'll talk about that and how we relate that to the college funding space. Number 3, I think you got to be the real deal. If you're going to hold yourself out as an expert and you're going to work with folks in a particular area, you really got to know your stuff. There's lots of research that's been done that talks about 10,000 hours to get to mastery. But part of being the real deal, it's not just about knowing the technical knowledge, it's also about relating to people. And that kind of leads into connect deeply with your clients, meet them where they're at, make sure you're solving the problems that they have. And part of that is, if they've got a specific problem, instead of trying to force them into talking about investments or getting a second opinion there, why don't we help them solve their number 1 concern, and then we can go to the other areas. So that's kind of how we've built out our practice to connect deeply with them. So I'll walk through some resources we have and kind of how we approach that. And then number 5, invest in your business. And that can mean a lot of different things. So that's staffing, that's software, that's training, that's your facilities, making sure you've got a great office for people to walk into, or if you're working virtual, making sure those experiences are great. So investing in your business would be number 5. So that's what I've laid out for today, and hopefully we should go right around 45 to 50 minutes, leave room for some questions and answers. And as Katie said, we'll walk you through what we have available for advisors and a pretty nice discount for those coming to us through Saving for College. So I start with this oftentimes when I give talks for advisors on the practice management side, and it's not meant to be comical, but a lot of times, I hope I can get 20 clients this year, or I hope I can grow my AUM by X amount, and I just say hope is not a strategy, right? So what we would propose is that if you can have a clear vision for your practice, a clear vision with goals, if your visions and your goals are clear, your decisions become a lot easier. And then also, if you have that vision and you're serving a particular demographic or profession, whatever that is, your decisions become easier. So, in our firm, that vision started with, how do we end the student loan crisis one family at a time? So we serve families here locally. I'm in Columbus, Ohio, and we've created a vision for our practice, and I'll kind of walk you through what that looks like for us. But regardless what you're looking to do with your practice, if you can have a vision, I kind of mapped out, and I think these are things to think about. Not everybody's going to come and want to be a college funding expert and build their firm around that. But regardless of what you want to do with your practice, these are some things that I really encourage people to think about, especially as we're looking into 2019. We're building out business plans. We're thinking about how we're going to invest. So part of that, thing number 1 there, what kind of business do you want? We commonly refer to it as a lifestyle practice these days. If you're a solo advisor or maybe a small partnership, we're a small partnership. My partner and I have been together for almost 15 years. And we're really focused on having a boutique lifestyle financial planning and investment management firm here in Central Ohio. 95% of the clients we serve are here. So looking at what does that look like? How do you build that out? And I'll walk through kind of a step-by-step to work backwards. Other people may be looking, to build an enterprise. Maybe the lifestyle practice isn't really what you envision. You want to have 10, 15, 20 advisors, and you want to serve advisors regionally or across the country or virtually. But getting clear on what that is, because that'll really drive a lot of your decisions as to how you market, what you want to build, how you acquire clients, how you all the pieces of the puzzle. So, kind of which way do you want to go? And people are coming to this, I know a lot of folks in this industry too, when we talk about the vision and what kind of practice do you want, the statistics are out there that a lot of advisors are quite frankly miserable because they work themselves into a job. And they just feel like it's, they have this commitment to their clients, but they're not really driven by what they get up and do every day. So if you can get clear on these things, it'll help flush all that out. So if we decide at the top, what do we want our practice to look like? Next thing is, who will you serve? What are you passionate about? For us, it's helping young adults get ideal outcomes out of college. So we want to serve Gen X parents that have college-bound kids. So that for us, and I'll walk through, what that looks like for us. So the third bullet there, what's your capacity? And that's driven on, what kind of practice do I want? Do I just want 50 clients and I don't want to have any staff and I don't want to have an office? Great. Well, you can probably serve fewer clients and have a good margin, but just, how many clients can you serve? And I'll walk you through how that works for us and kind of the way we coach. And that kind of gets into, how many hours per week and per month do you want to work? I think we oftentimes, when you're an entrepreneur and you're in business for yourself, we don't give ourselves permission to take time off. And I really think if you have a clear vision for what you want to do with your practice and you communicate that with your clients and with your staff and with your team, you can really build an ideal practice for yourself serving the right number of clients. So the next piece is, if we know those things, who will serve, how many clients, what's our annual work life look like, and then ultimately, if we start with what do we need our take-home pay to be? So if we take out overhead, rent, staff, all those other pieces, ultimately it comes down to what do we want to take home that'll make sure that we can have the lifestyle that we want, save for our own future, pay taxes, obviously. But what does that all look like? So I looked at this and I put together kind of a really how we've driven our practice to build this out, and kind of what we coach around building a really good practice that you love. So one of the pieces of that, when we look at vision, I call it intentional success. So build a great practice, have a great life. And like I said, for some people, this is, I know some advisors, their goal was they just wanted to generate $100,000 of income. And I know a lady that, she serves about 25 families, generates $100,000 to $150,000 of recurring revenue, and that serves her well. She's got 3 young kids. She's able to be with them. She works about 20 hours a week. So for her, that was her intentional success, to figure out what that looked like. So I think that's important to start with. So in this example, what I talk about is, if your after-tax goal, if I want to take home $200,000, so I figure, let's just say a third needs to go to taxes. So let's take $1,000 off the top. So 300,000 is going to income and tax, right? And then be intentional about how you build your firm. So what are we spending on, rent or a mortgage for a property and supplies, all that good stuff? What's our true kind of overhead just for the nuts and bolts? And that would include, all your softwares and all that kind of good stuff too. So what does that look like? And then, do you want to have an office manager? We call it a client experience manager. So that really helps with that. Is a paraplanner something you want? Because by having those folks, if you build those in, and you figure out the right time to do that, what we see is you're not doing any of your scheduling. You're not doing the meeting prep. You're not doing the meeting follow-up. You're really just sitting in meetings, working with them to help make good decisions if you have that built out. So like I said, this is one vision, just getting clear on what that looks like. Maybe you don't want any employees and you just want a really efficient solo practice. Just kind of figure that out. Maybe you just want an assistant, a virtual assistant, but kind of figuring those things out and building down to ultimately for this goal, for this case study, if we want 200,000 out of pocket, we really have to generate about $500,000 in recurring revenue. So we are in a great business, particularly if you're in a fee-based or fee-only model where you can create predictable recurring revenue, be that with assets under management or through ongoing monthly retainer planning fees, which is also becoming a more popular and I think common. I wouldn't call it common, but there's definitely a lot of advisors doing that, either flat fee or just doing a monthly retainer model. So that's kind of what we drive on. So if we know that's our goal for 500,000 to be the top line revenue, how do we get there? Because I think when we look at that, we say, gosh, I'm at $500,000. I'm only doing 80,000 now. Looking just at 500,000, we can't look at that because we need to have other ways to measure success as we go. So if we take it in bite-sized pieces and build out a good business plan, right? So if you were going to go to a bank and ask for a loan for your business, they'd want to see a business plan, but this is kind of a one-page business plan if you want the truth. But everything can drive on this, and you can measure your success and you can figure out what it takes to get to this type of client acquisition strategy. So if I start at the bottom, I say the top line goal that I want to get to is 500,000. And then on the bottom, what do we do if we can acquire 4 ideal clients per quarter? That's 16 per year. 16 per year, 4 per quarter. So if we focus on that and getting the right types of folks in the door, we can then measure ourselves. Are we on track? Are we behind year to year, quarter to quarter? And we can drive things on that. And you got to dial that up or down depending on what your goals are and when you want to be done. So the great thing about this too, when we look at this, what I've mapped out here is there is a point in your practice where you can be done. What I mean by done is you're no longer doing marketing and blogging and all the different things that you do, which probably take up 60 to 70% of your time for client acquisition. If you could just spend your time serving ideal clients, imagine what that puts you at if you were just serving your clients. If you're just serving your clients, what does that life look like? So in this model, what I built out, if you do this and you want to get to that 500,000, if you install kind of a fee minimum, doesn't mean you can't, go a little bit, waver a little bit on it. But if you set a minimum client, your average is going to be higher than that. So In our practice, when we bring clients on, they come in with an average about $4,500 annual retainer. So, and on average, $450,000 portfolio is how we typically work with clients. We do have several of them that don't have assets for us to manage, so we will work with them on a monthly retainer basis. So, but if you know those targets going in, and you know that that's what makes a good client, and that's what's going to lead me to get the kind of practice that I want. Here's how it looks. So we're going to end up with having probably somewhere between 100 and 110 clients. And if the goal is, we say we're going to meet with every client 2 times per year, we got to hold 222 meetings a year. Well, for me, if I said my goal is I want to take 3 weeks off per quarter. So that's different for everybody. Maybe you say, I only want to work 4 days a week. I want to have 3-day weekends every week. Some people say, I want to take off a month and travel globally or whatever that is. I want to go do a mission, a mission with our family over the summer. So whatever those things are, factoring that in. And again, if you've built out the staff to handle a lot of the client service, the paraplanning, what we look at is you're really running somewhere between 5 and 6 review meetings per week. You're not doing any marketing. You're not going to networking events, any of that stuff. You're going to add what I would say is I think this is generous. If you were doing 4 hours per client meeting per week from a, preparation, holding the meetings and follow up, 4 hours per client, you're working 20 to 25 hours per week. So this is real stuff, that can happen. But I think, like I said, all too often, if you can paint this picture and figure out what these things are for your ideal practice and work backwards, that's the key. So if you really create this vision, here's what I want this to look like when we're done. That's great. And once you get to that point, it doesn't mean you don't do anything. You're still going to be serving clients. And if you're crazy like me, you go on and you do some other things. So we've decided to take what we've learned and coach that with other advisors and do other things. But if you're only working 25 hours a week in your practice, it allows some flexibility to do that. So hopefully that's helpful. So when we look at this, where do I get this 4 clients per quarter number and 16 per year? So I went on bankrate.com, right? And I said, if my goal is to have $500,000 in the next 6 years, what do I need to do to get there? And I said, $18,000 per quarter of new recurring revenue goes into my practice, 18,000. So that's 4 clients at $4,500 for an annual basis, right? And then we also know that if we're managing dollars, that investment's going to grow. So I put in a rate of 6%. You could put in whatever you want. You could put in 0 if you want. But ultimately, if you look at this and you go to the bottom, it's going to show you somewhere between year 5 and year 6, your practice will be generating somewhere around $500,000 of annual recurring revenue. That for the most part is pretty predictable. With markets go up and down, but long term, that's kind of practice. A lot of people, I think, a lot of people would see pretty desirable. And then when we also look at that is looking at, as you build these clients, the lifetime value of these clients, right? And the equity and the value of your business, having a recurring business that runs like clockwork. If you can really build this out and refine it over the years, it's a heck of a good business. And call that from a sale value that I see anywhere from 2.5 to 3 times your annual recurring revenue is what you could probably sell if you've got a good, efficient practice. So anywhere from 1 to 1.5 million in investment value in the practice. So hopefully that's helpful. I really feel like I said, if you can focus on building your ideal practice and doing what you love, which I know for a lot of you is working with clients. That's why you got into this. You want to help people. So hopefully this is helpful just to create that vision of what you want to do, and then bite-sized pieces. You got to celebrate the victories along the way. I know for myself, starting the practice, the first 2 years were lean. By lean, I mean I didn't have any money coming home. So it took a while to build that up to cover overhead and all that good stuff. So hopefully that's helpful. So then the next piece that I would say is commit to a niche. We advocate college funding, and we'll walk through why and how we kind of do that. But the idea is, Seth Godin puts it really well, everyone is not your customer. In this day and age, if you can commit to a niche, it really does a number of different things. Number one, it really allows you to focus all your efforts. Your decisions are easier if you know your target client. You know where they work, the kind of money they make, you know what their common goals are, their common threads are, and you can really your marketing, your client events, everything you do can be more fun. So I was just thinking about this, and we just did a client event last month, and 95% of our clients are between the ages of 45 and 55, and they all live in the same couple of communities, the suburbs of Columbus. And they're walking in, there was people that they knew each other. They didn't know we worked together, but they certainly had a lot to talk about. But they knew each other and said, "Oh, you work with these guys?" So we're able to have a fun environment and not really have to worry about catering to a lot of different audiences. So even from that aspect, we have a lot of fun with our client events because it's just a fun group of people. So that's the idea. But even if just outside of this, so we're talking about college financial planning and how we build a practice around that. But even if you're looking at other areas, I put it out. It's usually either by a life stage or by a profession, right? That's kind of the different ways I feel like you can build a niche practice. And there's lots of great resources around these different areas. But I think ultimately it's working with people you enjoy working with. So we love solving problems for college-bound families because they're cool. Like our clients, we have a lot of really cool clients, a lot of business owners that are doing neat stuff around town. So that's what we want to focus on. If you really enjoy working with people that are entering into retirement, go after that. But focus your efforts around that. If you really like working with business owners, find a particular type of business or whatever that is. So we've seen a lot of these work, but I just kind of, who will you serve? That's the key question. So what we focus on obviously is serving the college bound. And one of the marketing rules I wanted to that I talk about and coach to is what I call 5 up, 5 down. So if you think of your client avatar, if you don't have one, you should create one. What do they look like? How much money they make? Where do they live? What kind of jobs do they have? What are their common concerns? And if you have that avatar, what happens is if you paint that picture for us, let's say it's a 45-year-old couple that lives in a nice suburb here in Columbus. And what we know is that if you think about yourself and think about your sphere of friends and the people you hang out with, they're typically going to be anywhere from 5 years younger to 5 years older. And they're going to be in a similar socioeconomic, and they're going to live in the same part of town, or roughly, same type of part of town. So for us, we know that our clients, they also run with other people that are in that same demographic. So once you get things rolling, referrals, if you're working in a targeted market, referrals become very easy. Because with us, what we just tell clients is, you don't need to know anything about their finances or if they're a great client, but if they've got a college-bound student and they got a high schooler, tell them to look us up, send them our way. We'll figure out if we're a good fit or not, right? But that 5 up, 5 down marketing rule is just something I really impress upon advisors to think about because it is it's tried and true. Like I said, if you think about that for you and your sphere of influence, that's probably who you run with. 5 years younger to 5 years older, so 40 to 50 years old, and make a good living. So, so we build that the right way. So 5 up, 5 down marketing is an important piece. So for us, what we look at is where is there an acute need that not a lot of advisors are focusing on, and we see that squarely centered on Gen X. So Gen X right now is anywhere from 38 to 53 years old, roughly. This is what they put out there. So a couple things we know about Gen X. One is that they're the most, they are right now and are going to be in the future the most affluent group of investors that we have, predominantly because there's a lot of dual income households out there, just because you kind of have to do it to make ends meet. It's a very highly educated group relative to past generations. So we also know that Gen X is a generation that is known to be good referrers. So they do refer business, particularly those that are affluent, and they trust the advice of good advisors that do real financial planning. We also know that study after study, there's Gallup does one frequently, but I don't have a slide for it, but the number one concern of Gen X folks that have kids is, how do we pay for college? It's not how do we save for college, it's like, how do we actually pay for college, knowing that the costs are rising, and they're all aware of it, but not as aware of it as maybe they should be. So when we look at digging in, what does the market look like? So what we know is that there's 16 million students across the country in 9 through 12. So what that means is about 4 million new students come in and 4 million students leave high school each year. So that's 4 million new parents that are targets that are freaking out about college costs. And they're looking to solutions, they're looking to financial advisors, and most advisors just would say, I don't really do that kind of work. So, and we're trying to change that. So what we also know is about close to 70% of them go directly on to school, right? So that's a pretty staggering number. If we look back 30 years ago, that was reversed. Only about a third of high school graduates were going directly into college, and now we're almost 70%. So this talk isn't about the state of it. This is just what's going on. We know that our affluent parents that live in nice communities that you all serve and you probably want to work with, they envision a 4-year traditional college experience. There are lots of ways, we talk about trade stuff and all that stuff, but the reality is, there's a demand for trades, but the reality is that most families still just envision that 4-year traditional college experience. So we want to help them get there. So and if you peel back the layers of the onion a little bit deeper, why we see this as such a rich market is when you're looking at a market opportunity, number one, they're not being talked to a lot. The latest estimate I saw is about 15% of Gen X have a financial professional they work with, 15%. And what we also know is that the assets of Gen X are expected to quintuple by 2030. So what's creating that? Well, as you can probably imagine, the baby boomers are retiring, right? So, and then they're going to pass away over the next 20, 30 years. So that wealth is going to transfer. So for us in our practice, what we see is our investments are growing just as much from inheritance and from rollovers and transition out, because we've been doing this a decade. So our clients they've been done with college 3, 4, 5 years, and now we're working on transitioning them into retirement. So yes, we get clients for life with college planning. And like I said, if you get to 100 to 110 clients, you don't need to add any more clients. Your current clients will grow with you as well. So that's kind of what, I try and show this graph just to kind of point out some things. So when we look at serving a niche market, regardless of what it is, these are the 3 things that I see have to happen, right? And I'm going to walk through a couple of these as we go into the next pieces. But when we talk about being the real deal, you do need the technical knowledge. You need to know how 529 works, and you need to know how financial aid works at schools. You need to know how to help guide families through this from a technical perspective. But I would say equally as important is to be able to connect with them on a behavioral and emotional standpoint. Meet them where they're at, solve their number one problems, and understand the stress and anxiety that comes along with paying for college for 3 or 4 kids because of the cost, and sometimes there's guilt involved. So understand how that works. And I'll walk through a couple tools that we use. And then, if you're going to work with the market, is it profitable? Can you build a good business around this? So if you're serving, as an example, like if you're serving younger clients that probably can't afford $3,000 or it doesn't make sense, if you're serving, new parents, you may need to focus on building towards 150 to 200 clients, just because if your goals are there. So just kind of understanding, how do we make it profitable? What's the numbers we need? And then what's the, we put all this together. How do we build a service model that serves them? Because if you're trying to serve lots of different people, the reality is your service model is going to be it's not going to be great. So I'll give you an example. We've gotten to a point where we're only adding ideal clients that have college-bound teenagers. The only exception we make is when it's parents or parents or kids of our clients. So if we're helping with estate planning for their parents, or we're helping with our young professionals coming out of school, help them set them up on a 401k, et cetera, we really consider that all part of the family. But when we onboard clients, we're focused on, let's stay in our lane. So we had a request not too long ago. I had just a referral from a client, and their number one concern, they were already done with college, and their number one concern is an executive that had some restricted stock options, and he was making a transition to another executive position. That was his number one thing, doing analysis of all the different stock options, restricted stock, et cetera, et cetera. And I just said, time out, I'm going to refer you to another advisor. they're like, really? And I said, yeah. I said, this just isn't an area. I would have spent 2 weeks trying to dig everything up and probably still wouldn't have gotten the right answer. So I think we're coming into an area where niche practices and the ability to refer to the right advisor is really something that's coming. It's coming around. So I equate it to, a couple things. Like if you think of a law practice, they've got people that are, they're laser focused in certain areas, right? So they would refer business to someone else if if they don't do estate planning, they would refer that to an estate planning attorney. If they don't do, if they don't work with public companies, they're not going to do that kind of work. So I think that is kind of where we're going. Another area, young doctors working that are high income, looking to figure out how do we pay off our student loans most efficiently. That's not my practice, right? I know a lot about college, but the student loan stuff, I have advisors I refer that to because I know they're going to serve them better. It's just not a good use of our time. So if we're just focused on our ideal client. So those are the pieces. So the next thing is, how do you build it? How do you become the real deal? How do you be the go-to expert? You've got to have the technical knowledge, which we'll come back to when we talk about resources. The other thing is, how do you build your niche network? How do you build a network of folks that will refer you the business that you need? And there'll also be resources for you in areas that you don't serve, right? Next piece, know your market. And the last one, you can have a service built around your ideal client. So if your ideal client is there, your pricing, your delivery, everything is built for that ideal client. And if you're only serving, a particular demographic, it makes that building of a service model much easier. People are always asking, how, still trying to figure out, how do we charge? What's the upfront fee? Is there an upfront fee? What does that look like? All those pieces of the puzzle. So if your service is built for an ideal client, it makes a lot of that easier. So here's a piece that we use, and kind of when we look at what's the landscape of working in college funding and college advice, these are the folks that are what I call market participants. So these are folks that provide advice or guidance or work with people in these areas. A traditional financial planning practice, you're going to go, and we have these relationships too, working with estate planning attorneys and CPAs and divorce attorneys, if that's your market. And those are all great, but what I found is we really don't generate the number of referrals that we need from those folks. I've never figured out a great way to do it. But in working with these folks and understanding the ecosystem around this, we've developed relationships, just kind of from top to bottom. So private college and career counselors, those are probably one of our number one sources. So we go out and we work with those folks that are also working with college-bound families. They do other pieces of the puzzle that we don't do, right? So kind of the same deal, college admissions counselors, independent education consultants. We partner with them, and some of them we even plug some of our college funding pieces just into their process. It's baked in. So we do joint events, private events with them. And I think it's really important, you can build those in. So, you need to know some things about student loan providers in your area. ACT, SAT prep, that's an area we get referrals several times a month. If anything comes up about money, they know we're the place that they get sent to. We work with them closely, and if anybody's seen like prior things we've done, the ACT, SAT, we work with them because it can increase your chances of scholarships. So it is a back and forth, but it's really these folks that do private counseling, they have to do 100 to 200 clients a year just to stay in business. So they got to do a lot of volume, whereas we're looking to do 15 to 20. So, we're able to see a lot of folks, but ultimately we only work with those that are a good fit. And then the other thing in this area is, financial aid administrators, high school counselors, college admissions, at the actual colleges. Those are folks that we've developed relationships with, not because we necessarily want them to send us business. I just want to understand their business, right? So I want to understand what their challenges are, what their opportunities are, how we can be a resource. And then, if I've got particular questions on financial aid and how they look at a family, I call a financial aid administrator at one of the top universities in the country. So there's ways we can do that and do it not in just a self-serving way, but like we really want to know how can we serve our families better. And if you meet these people, they'll not only give you referrals, but they're great when you've got specific questions in an area, great resources. So hopefully that helps. It's a good way to just kind of know centers of influence. I don't know a lot of advisors that get regular referrals from an ACT prep company or an education consultant. So, and that's kind of what we focus on, and do private events. So the next piece is market analysis. Market analysis is actually something we do for folks that are either considering investing in our programs or that are already in it that just want to have a better idea. So I get to question a lot of, you've got great information. Why are you sharing this with everybody? And this is why. Number one, we've built out a nice practice. We've got a nice firm. This is kind of an act 2 for me. And then also the other piece is when we look at our market here in Columbus, Ohio, these are the 5 primary areas that we serve. So down to what's the median income and how many students are in high school in that district. So we look at this and we say, how many students are there? Well, we've got 21,000 students in high school, right? We got all those students. We've got close to 5,000 kids graduating per year. These are all within 10 miles of my office. So if we focus on just serving those communities and the other professionals that work in those communities and the counselors and those folks in those communities, that's all the business we're ever going to need to keep growing a great practice. And I guess, this is something that as you're looking at how do I build a great practice, is college funding a worthwhile venture for me? And honestly, sometimes I've told advisors it really isn't. If you're in too rural of an area and there's not enough critical mass, I don't know that you can be as laser focused. But for us, and we live in a fairly decent sized city with this type of opportunity, we just focus on serving those communities well, both with our free resources and with our paid services. So we just try and be a resource for all those communities. And I always say when the time is right, people raise their hand if they want help, and we'll identify if they're a good fit for us or not. I know this one's kind of hard to see, but I want to give you an idea of who are we talking about here. So when we look at our partners and our markets and people that we look at, we connect with PTOs and boosters. Some employers bring us in to do talks. Professional organizations, so some of the small business owner groups have brought us in to talk. Club sports is another area we do a lot of private events with for their folks on an annual basis. Like I mentioned, different tutoring companies and career prep companies. When we go in to do these talks now, they're bringing their clients in and we're just the endorsed speaker. So it's a pretty powerful thing. The other thing is with all of these organizations and fairs, they happen every year. So once we do them one, we're typically invited back for another one, and we can continue to build that and really not have to go hunt for new relationships. We just nurture the ones we have. So this is just, like I said, just different, a way to think about it from a live event or webinars, how we do it. And then the other piece that you see up in the top left, our e-newsletters and social media. So our newsletter, I think, is our most powerful marketing tool if you're in a niche market, because you can really focus it. You don't have to worry about all these different things. We just focus it on college, right? So our newsletter and our blog is focused on one area, and we can have deep knowledge and know that it's valuable for everybody that's out there, and it's very referable too. So folks that are on our newsletter, we see folks that are on there 2, 3, 4 years, and when they're ready, they raise their hand. When they finally have that sophomore or junior and they have that inflection point of, oh crap, we don't know exactly what we're doing. So they come in. So hopefully that's helpful, just as a, kind of, like I said, building out your network, understanding your market around you, and then also here's the partnership opportunities you can explore. Okay, so shift gears into connecting deeply with your clients. So a couple things to think about. Like I mentioned, when we talk about this area, I think the key is to understand the stress, anxiety, misinformation, fear, sometimes guilt that parents have around paying for college. And our goal is to bring their shoulders down. There are a number of advisors out there that I see selling college funding services with fear tactics. If you don't sign with me, you're gonna get this wrong. So sign here and press hard. You're making 3 copies. It's not a good thing. We want to reduce the stress and anxiety. We use our college pre-approval process to do that. And we tell people, look, there are ways normal families pay for college every day. There are ways normal families pay for college every day. If you have the right information, create a good budget, We know how to not get in over our head with loans. We'll be able to create great outcomes for your young adult. So some of the conversations we have and that we would advocate, we as advisors need to get better at. How do you facilitate having a good college money talk with your child? That's one that's really challenging for a lot of folks. How do we do that? So, we have a guide and we've got some budget worksheets in there. Student loans, how do those work? What's the deal with those? Which one should we take? What's the best strategy? How do we pay less for college? What's this FAFSA thing? So connecting with them and just having the information to provide them so that they can have an educated decision. And then I think another part is just showing them there is a process. So our college pre-approval process, most folks shop for college. We see often they start on the right, they go shopping for schools, they do the visits, only to find out that it's way out of their budget. So they visit these great schools and their kid may be able to get in, but there's no way they're going to be able to pay for it. So we have this novel concept of creating a budget, which we call college pre-approval, and then also setting a maximum student loan amount so that that you're not going to get over your heads and your students not getting over their heads with student loans. And then we go find schools and focus on what schools are going to be within our budget on a net cost basis. So another topic, another time. We spend a lot of time in that in our coursework of exactly how to navigate that. But if you can just show folks, let's build this the right way. Here's the right way to do real college funding planning. So the other piece with working with college-bound families, connecting deeply with clients, this idea of consultative sales. What I know is when people come in with college concerns, what we see oftentimes is they come in and they bring all their statements and they're like, okay, I got this in 529, I got these investment funds, and I say, whoa. Let's take a step back here. We'll get to the financials, and they know that your stuff with financials if you are, a wealth management firm. But we say, let's connect and I want to learn more about you and your experience and how you went through this. So oftentimes they'll say, tell me what's your alma mater? Did you go to college? And what was your major? What do you do now? What do you remember about the process? How many schools did you apply to? And then ultimately it boils down to how was it paid for? Did you take out loans? Did you work through school? Did your parents pay for it? And all along this way, we're trying to figure out how to get a good college funding philosophy for this family, because mom and dad, getting them on the same page with how it was paid for, that's critical. So hoping bring context, get mom and dad on the same page, and then we can bring the students in to understand more about them. But by having this simple conversation, we know more about them than their current advisor probably ever did. So because we're talking about something that's important to them, learning about their alma mater, where they're from, etc. And then we get into talking about their kids. That's the next step, right? So we've learned about them, and now we want to learn about their kids. So it's a little different than a traditional financial planning intro meeting, because I haven't asked anything about money yet. So we're saying, where are your kids in school? What's their graduation year? What are they into? Playing sports? Are they in the band? So you're learning about their kids. And I don't know, many of you probably have kids. People like to talk about their kids. So we're getting that. We're also, getting context. And then we get into what kind of student are they? Do we have ACT test scores, et cetera? Do they know what they want to be when they grow up? Do they have a college list yet? So these kind of questions, again, these are ways to connect with clients much more deep than just financials, because we'll get to the financials and we'll see if it's a good fit for us to work together. But these types of areas is really where I feel like you can really build a deep client relationship with folks. So hopefully that's helpful. All right. So the last piece that we see is, as we bring this full circle is, it's investing in your business. It's hard, but creating a budget and figuring out where is this, both today and then if you build that 5-year plan, 6-year plan, when are we going to staff up? What is the benchmark we're at? What technology are we going to invest in? What kind of training do we need to do to be in this market? How do we build a marketing budget? And community, I think, is something that's becoming more and more important, and something that we're building out for our advisors. As I always say, we don't have all the answers. I feel like there's advisors trying things, across the country, and we've got great ideas from them. So having a community of folks that are trying to accomplish the same thing, serving a similar demographic, is really important these days. So Investing in your business. So what I wanted to talk about, if you choose to invest with us, is just how we support advisors through this process. Everything is about ending the student loan crisis one family at a time. If we can raise the bar on college funding advice, we feel like we've put together good programs to help advisors do that, and set yourself apart in your local communities. So the first thing we have available, we call it Part 1, cleverly labeled, but the mechanics of college funding. So, and that one, it's 8.5 hours of CE credit. So if you're at the year end and you need CE, like unfortunately I still do, but I already know courses that I want to take. So if you need CE, we have 8.5 hours baked in here. So it's an online academy. It's self-paced. There's several different modules, and then there's also downloadable guides. So if you absorb more from reading or from video, they're both there for you as a resource, and then also for you to have available to refer back to. So it's lifetime access to the academy. We do updates all the time, really throughout the year. New things come out. We just put out this year, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. We had to update that, so we didn't charge extra for people that have already invested. That's just something, if you want to have that, you log in and we let you know when those updates go in. So for Saving for College folks, we have a 20% discount. So it's typically $9.99. It's $7.99 for folks that are on the webinar. So hopefully that's a nice incentive. And like I said, the CE this time of year may be a good reason to do that. And also, if you've got some time where you're not going to be crazy busy through the holidays, a good way to build a new skill. So, that's part number 1. That's the first thing we built out. As we built Part 1 and we put folks through Part 1 and taught them everything we know about the kind of, call it nerding out on college funding, the next piece people wanted to know was, we've done the mechanics, we've got the guides, et cetera, but like, how do we actually market this? How do we take this to market? So we built out the marketing, college planning, and building business as a local expert. That's part number 2. It's more of a marketing focus. So the practice management stuff. So we've got scripts in there of how to have that college money conversations. You get access to the college pre-approval system through there. So you're going to learn exactly how we develop all those tools, data gathering forms, and then probably the thing that a lot of folks wanted and needed were, I don't want to recreate the wheel here. Can we just have some branded materials for our firm? So we have PowerPoint slides very similar to the deck you see here, professionally done PowerPoints that you can white label with us. And then we also create brochures for folks if they want them to be able to go out, and put them together. So this is a friend of ours, Quinn, that utilizes our resources, and it's branded to his color palette and everything like that. So we've tried to develop that because I know as myself, like with some of the stuff, you don't need to recreate the wheel. So, this is one of the brochures. We got a bifold and a full length. So the full program for Saving for College folks, for the full program, it's actually 30% off. So instead of $3,000, it's $2,400, or you can set it up on a monthly payment to do that. So that's, kind of on the course, what we have available. The links will come out after this. And then the good news is we also have access to, Katie mentioned it at the front, we have a free college funding crash course. So if you just want to kick the tires, there's 2 hours of free CFP CE in there. And it gives you an idea of the kind of material that we talk about throughout the course. So if you want the free college funding crash course, you can certainly go and get it. So that's kind of the free one, and then invest after that. So you can kind of choose where you want to go with our education platforms. And then the last piece I'll spend some time on is our college planning software, College Aid Pro. So collegeaidpro.com. This is a software tool that we've developed, myself and some of my partners that are other college funding nerds that we've done this together to create what we think is a really game-changing tool in the industry. So I'll show you guys a quick little demo of the tool just for a couple minutes, because I think it's the only way to really see how it comes to life. But we have a free 14-day trial. It's almost the end of December. Our price is going to go up from $49 a month to $69 a month. With College Aid Pro, it's not just software. We are building a community. So we do bi-weekly training webinars and grab bag webinars, myself and other college funding experts. So College Aid Pro, it is a separate thing. Most folks if you've been in college planning a while, this may be the way that you want to access us. Other folks, if you're just kind of want to learn more, doing the education first may be what's right for you. But these are just the tools that we've developed that we're really excited about. So I'm going to pop into the College Aid Pro system real quick. So hopefully this is working good. So this is the interface. So if you don't know a ton about college funding yet, the key here is we illuminate what your expected family contribution would be from all three different formulas that are used, and we help you create your college pre-approval budget. So that's kind of the baseline, because we're going through creating a bio on the family, trying to figure out what can you afford and what do the schools think you can afford. That's usually very different. In this case, this is a divorced family, so you can see EFCs are going to be dramatically different because these schools usually bring in the divorced parents' income and assets, whereas these schools don't. So helping parents shop around that. We go through, we do a student bio. What kind of student are they? What are they interested in? Right? So we even give them an idea of, if you go into this type of major, what could you expect from a starting income standpoint? So that tool's in there. That's how we kind of set maximum student loan amounts. And then we go through the student, what resources they have. We help them create their budget right inside of one tool. So it keeps you organized. And then probably the big thing is understanding, once we've built that out and we know what they can afford with their budget, and we know, do you want to consider any student loans in this? And then we say, okay, well, what schools do we want to look at? So, and the main thing that we focus on is, if we go here, what's the net cost, right? So that's kind of the key when we look into the net cost of schools. I'm going to show you this other report here. So you can see how these schools stack up. We're going to give you an idea of what's the school cost. What do they think you can afford? Do you get any need-based aid, need-based grants? And do we think you qualify for any scholarships? So inside of the tool, we've got every scholarship that exists at the university. So we're going to give you an idea based on your academics. What do we think is a reasonable scholarship amount you could get from that school? So it's a pretty neat way to look and see, what's your best opportunity? Is it need-based or merit scholarships? And then from there, it gets into, if we look at this, the ultimate thing we're trying to drive towards is, over the 4 years, what's our total 4-year cost? How's that stack up against our budget? If we have a funding gap, what is it? And then if we have to pay a student loan, what's the monthly payment? So when we're looking at this is a deep dive. This used to take me 4 or 5 hours to do. I can put together a case in 10 to 15 minutes now, and stack schools side by side. So it's a really cool tool. I encourage you to at least do the free trial. And the one thing that we built in here that I'll kind of end on, but we can do an advanced search to try and figure out what schools might, if you're newer to this is a great way to do it. So what schools within 300 miles have architecture majors, and I want to know, can you sort them by, the funding gap to go there? So it'll show you schools that meet your criteria that you may not be considering, but that have that major, and show you what the funding gap would be based on the scholarships they would get or need-based aid. So we're excited about College Aid Pro, as you can probably tell. It's done a ton for me and my partners in our practices alone. So we're excited more advisors are taking this on. So with that, I will flip it back over and see if we have questions. And I know I talk fast and I apologize, but I think that's it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Joe. We do have a couple questions. First of all, regarding the College Aid Pro tool, what kind of training do you offer for advisors to use that tool?
There's just on the tool, we've got a 4-part introductory series that everybody gets access to. So it just goes through all the different parts of the software. So not really as much on college funding, what's driving things. It's more just here's ways to use the tool. There's scenario casework you can do in there, et cetera. So yeah. And then if you do the free trial, I would encourage, we do a demo call, or you can call and just see if it's right for you when you're in trial.
Okay. And then I know you mentioned how your email newsletter has been successful for you, and someone was asking, do you offer any advice on how to get started building that email list?
Yeah, and we do go through some of that in the course, but here's a quick one. So anybody you meet, anybody in your database, if you don't have an email list, go to MailChimp. I think it's the easiest to use program. Go to MailChimp, import your contacts in there. Take out the ones you don't want, but just start one. And I'd say do it once a month. It's easy to get started with once a month, and just share something that's happened in your practice in the last month that you think would be valuable for folks that are in there. So it doesn't have to be. Sometimes it's something with a case. So hey, this came up with a client. They were asking me. They were asking about Roth conversions. So here's a little bit on, what a Roth conversion means for a retiree, something like that. Or with college, we got a question about the difference between private college and state universities, financial aid policies. Well, here's what we found. So again, create the list and just start one, and just starting one a month, I think is a great way to start. And then building your list is, we advocate partnering with other folks and hopefully doing some joint stuff. Kind of like we do with savingforcollege.com. This is a partnership as well. So hopefully that helps. Is just kind of a way to get started with a newsletter. Simple way to do it. Don't overthink it.
Okay. And then we have one final question. Someone's asking, how long does it take to master the program?
10 years. No, I'm just kidding. To master the program, I think it's to master something you have to implement, right? So we've built the curriculum out so that it's there whenever you need it. So if you need to reference back to something, you start working with clients in this space. It's usually we see about 2 weeks is what it takes people to get it done, just to etch out the time to get the education done. And from there, implementation really is about going out and meeting with clients and knowing that you're not going to have every answer to every question. But you can always say, let me do some homework on that, and you can refer back to that, or you can refer that to our team. So, if you're especially if you're in the College Aid Pro community, that's why we do biweekly grab bags with case studies and all that stuff. So, you don't have to be the master right away, but know that you've got support as things do come up. So, we field a lot of emails and a lot of calls just on, hey, this came up with a client. So there's so much to know, and the honest part is it's constantly evolving. The Financial Aid Administrators Conference was just a couple weeks ago in Atlanta, and there's a ton going on. There's days of material, new stuff going on in the space. So we're trying to curate that content so you can avoid some of the noise and hopefully have good material you can refer to as things change too. So hopefully that helps.
Okay, one final thing. I don't know if you mentioned this, Joe, but someone's asking for the link for the 2-hour continuing ed class that you mentioned, and I'm not sure if that link is going to be in our email.
So for that, if you just go to capstonecollegepartners.com. So if you want to look at the course and look at the free course, you can just go there and you click on free resources. To get the discount, you want to make sure you use the links that are going to be sent out in the email if you want to invest in the course.
Okay, yeah. So anyone who wants that discount has to use the link that comes through the email. That's important to know.
Yep.
Okay, yep. Well, it's about the hour's about up, so I just wanted to thank everyone again for joining us and for all the great questions. Remember to keep an eye out from that email. It will be coming from savingforcollege.com, and that will, as we said, it will contain the link to get your CE credit, and then also that link to get the discount on the course that Joe mentioned. And I know a few people asked about the slides. We'll also be sending a copy of those from the presentation in that email. So thank you again, Joe. It was great having you. And I'm sure we'll be doing another one of these probably in 2019.
Yeah, thanks. Good luck to everybody. And I hope it was helpful in helping you map out your 2019 and building a great practice that you love.
Okay, thanks again.
Thanks. Bye.